What's your number 5 most excited for game this year?
Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Interesting.
I'm a big tradition guy. And I think that Ohio State going down to Notre Dame is going to be a really good test. We saw last year Notre Dame scared them. Notre Dame was up 10-7 pretty late in that game. I think Notre Dame is going to be pretty good. When you have a guy like Sam Hartman that's going to be able to keep those defenses honest. I mean, this is the best Notre Dame quarterback that I can remember probably since Brady Quinn. Like when they made that national title game with Everett Golson, I mean, he's not a good quarterback. Tommy Rees himself was not a good quarterback. Hartman is going to elevate this Notre Dame offense, and I think they're fun. I didn't like Notre Dame when Brian Kelly was there. He's just not likable. How do you not like Marcus Freeman in what he's doing for this program? So I think it's a good game. I think it's a potential trap game for Ohio State. It's got tradition. I'm in.
Yeah, that actually is not on my list. And it's actually not also in my just missed the cut list. I think it's just that way because I expect Ohio State to win in a fairly convincing manner. Now, maybe that game's like week 4, so I think that they've probably figured out any quarterback kinks at that point. We still don't know who Ohio State's starting quarterback is going to be between Kyle McCord or Devin Brown. We'll see how that ends up shaking out. I think it'll end up being Kyle McCord personally, but that actually is not on my list. Talk about helmet games, like, yeah, that's definitely probably up there for a lot of people.
Probably
For me,
number
it's
one.
just not, just because I expect Ohio State to win. Or my number 5, I'm going to start out in the Pac-12. Number 6, USC going to number 14, Utah. Those are obviously the preseason AP rankings. I wanted to put a few Pac-12 games on here, and there's a lot, and I just missed the cut list. I put USC at Utah number 5 there because I think that game, obviously we know what happened last year between those two schools, Utah beating them twice and really just absolutely punching USC in the mouth and just physically annihilating them in each game. Now, obviously USC played them really close out in Salt Lake City, I believe, in the midpoint of last season. But I'm excited to see if Cam Rising is fully healthy at that point, coming off of his ACL injury in the Rose Bowl. We should know if he's ready to go at that point. And as far as I'm concerned, like, Utah's won the Pac-12 the last 2 years. That league kind of belongs to them until someone else takes it from them. And I know that they're the 3rd or 4th highest ranked preseason team in the Pac-12 behind USC, Oregon, and Washington. I believe they're ranked ahead of or behind Oregon. Oregon State's also ranked out there. So I put that one number 5, but I could have put USC, Oregon, USC, Washington. I could have put any combination games there, but I put that one because of what happened last year.
Dude, the past 2 years, look what they did at Oregon. They won 38-7 and 38-10 in the span of 3 weeks. We're in the Pac-12.
Yep.
Everyone was like Caleb Williams, Heisman, college football playoff. But that USC defense could not handle a rushing attack from Utah. I think you're right. I think Utah is being slept on as being serious Pac-12 title contenders. I mean, dude, they're legit. You bring back, Cam, this is going to be an elite team.
Yeah, and their defense is going to be really good again. And I'm just high on that program, and I don't feel like anyone talks about them enough because they don't have the sex appeal, the brand name of USC, Oregon, and Washington this year. And I mean, even last year, I felt like UCLA got more pub nationally until late in the season when they kind of started to lose a couple games, especially after they lost to USC. All right, I'll go 4, and then I'll let you go here, number 4. Week 1, LSU against Florida State.
Thanks for stealing my game.
Oh, is this your number 4 as well?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So this will be a good conversation.
Yeah.
So this was maybe the best game played last season, and it was week 1. It was an incredible football game. I'm fired up for it this year, and I think that there's some legitimate playoff stakes in this game, actually.
We're going to find – yeah, I'm sorry.
Because Florida State has Clemson, I think, week 3. Obviously, LSU has Bama later in the season. Whoever loses this game is already flirting with missing a playoff opportunity if they lose another one. So I love the playoff implications in week 1. I think that that's super fun. And also, these are two teams that I'm pretty high on entering the season. I think both could legitimately make the playoff, win their respective conference. And there's a lot that would need to happen for each of those schools to do that. But I'm fired up for this game in week 1. And I love that it's a Sunday night.
Oh, yeah, like last year. Well, that was a crazy game, right? The blocked extra point. But no, I look at this game, and it's not Alabama, Ohio State. It's not Georgia taking on proven Ohio State. These are two programs that are starting to get hyped up a little bit. and they have to prove it this year. Would you really be surprised if Florida State started 2-2? No, I think
No,
Clemson's
because of what their schedule looks like in the first month.
I think Clemson's actually pretty good at football, defending ACC champs. Nobody's talking about them as much as they used to. So, no, this is a phenomenal game. And Brian Kelly, expectations, great. You won the division at 10-4. But are you going to take that next step? You left Notre Dame to win national championships. You got to beat Florida State. I like Florida State, but LSU should win this game.
I think LSU should win the game. It is being played at Camping World Stadium, I believe, and last year it was in New Orleans. So it's not necessarily going to be a home game for LSU like it was last year, and that maybe raises some concern. And, I mean, you're looking at two potential Heisman candidates at quarterback, too, with Jordan Travis at Florida State and obviously Jane Daniels at LSU. So I'm fired up for that one. I think that's an awesome way to kind of kickstart the season in week 1 and really kind of get us ready for week 2 and week 3 after that. All right, Carson, what's your number 3?
Number 3. Let me get it. I like Ohio State, Penn State. I mean, Penn State, this is a program that people think can maybe crash into the playoff. I mean, they got a great running back. And when do you ever hear, you lose your quarterback that won a Rose Bowl MVP and you're supposed to improve? Like, people are like, they upgraded at quarterback with a freshman, Drew Allar. I mean, Sean Clifford, hate to say it, didn't really have a lot of big wins. James Franklin even went on record and said the one thing that's holding us back from winning national championships is that elite quarterback play. So I like Penn State. This was a top 10 defense. This was a program with 2 great running backs. Drew Allar is dynamic. So Penn State taking on Ohio State, this is a close game every single year. If they want to be taken seriously, they have to go into the shoe and compete well and maybe even win.
So, follow-up point. You said the biggest thing keeping Penn State from competing for national championships is elite quarterback play. Agree with that. Drew Allar is a 5-star quarterback, and I'm fired up for him to be the starting quarterback. You know what James Franklin's record is against top 10 teams at Penn State?
Well, it's not good. So he's beat Ohio State once on a blocked field goal. How many times has he beat Michigan? Twice. How many top 5 wins? I don't know. Does Wisconsin count in the Big Ten title game?
I don't know. I just know that their overall record is 3-20.
Yeah.
That's horrible. That's so bad. Because they've had really good teams.
I'm not a James Franklin guy.
This game is in my just missed category. I'm super high on Penn State entering the year. I think that they're going to have potentially the best defense in the Big Ten this year. I think that should help them playing against Penn State or playing against Ohio State. They've got to be better on the line of scrimmage, especially on the defensive line. That's where they really struggled last year against Michigan. Everyone remembers they gave up 418 rushing yards to the Wolverines last year. What's interesting about the Penn State situation is they always play Ohio State close, but they get smashed by Michigan whenever they play them in the Big House. Well, now this year, Michigan has to go to Happy Valley. So if Penn State can get one of those, which I think is conceivable, and I don't think it's fair to expect them to win both because that's just asking a lot. But if they can get one of them, they could maybe go to the Big Ten title game. And I mean, whoever comes out of the East is going to win the Big Ten. Okay, so my number 3, LSU at Alabama. This is one of my favorite games every single season. I would argue that this is turning into like maybe the biggest must-watch game of our lives. We're both in our early 20s. Like consistently, this has probably been the one conference game every single year that people are most excited about in terms of 2 really good teams. The way this game ended last year, last play of the game, LSU wins on a 2-point conversion. Ballsy call by Brian Kelly works on his favor, and it basically is the reason why Bama misses a playoff and misses the SEC title game. So I've got this one number 3, and part of the reason is Bama was picked to win the SEC West by I think like 1 point or like 1 vote over LSU. I really have no idea how I had a vote for that, how I would decipher those 2 teams. I think I trust LSU's top line talent a little bit more. We talked about Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Mason Smith is returning at defensive tackle. Harold Perkins is maybe the best defensive player in college football this year. I think LSU's top line talent is great. I just don't know if they have the depth like Alabama does. When you look at Bama's blue chip ratio being like over 90%, I kind of think that they figure out the quarterback thing. They have like 3 guys who I feel like are all capable enough of being good enough, and I think they're going to run the ball really well.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's hard for me to not put this game on there when it's 2 preseason top 5 teams, and the game's in T-Town. So I'm fired up for that one.
I got concerns about the quarterback play. And here, I'll just give you the number 2 because this is gonna kind of lead into the LSU Alabama conversation. My number 2 game is Texas Alabama.
Oh, me too.
That's your number 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be a great game. Call me crazy. Would it really be shocking if Quinn went into Tuscaloosa and outscored Bushner?
Buckner.
Buckner.
No. I don't know. I don't know if he's actually going to start for Bama, though. I don't think anyone knows who's going to start for Bama.
I'm telling you, if Quinn plays last year healthy, Texas wins that football game. They settled for 4 field goals in the red zone. They lost 20.
I mean, they might win that game if Hudson Card doesn't sprain his ankle.
That is a great game. I'm high on Texas. Texas for the first time is finally the Big 12 favorite. I want Steve Sarkisian to save his job. I'm taking Texas to defeat Alabama.
Wow, that's bold.
I'm taking it.
That's bold.
I think they're 8-point favorites.
Okay. I'm also high on Texas.
Obviously,
Obviously, for people who are tuned into our group chats, I'm high on Texas. I don't think that they beat Bama, but I am fired up for this game. I think that Texas does cover this. I think that being in week 2, that's huge for Texas and their opportunity to go in there if Bama does struggle at the quarterback spot. And if their offensive line isn't as good as it's been in the past, their offensive line wasn't as good as it usually was last season. I'm high on Texas. The receiving core is nuts this year. Everyone knows about A.D. Mitchell transferring there. Everyone knows about Xavier Worthy returning for the Longhorns. But don't forget Isaiah Nair. He didn't play last year because he tore his ACL. He's super fast, transfers from Wyoming. He's going to be really good. Jordan Winnington returns. Jatavian Sanders returns at tight end. Their pass catching core is about as good as it's going to get behind only Ohio State. I'm high on Texas. I think that their offensive line is going to be good. They have the best defensive player in the Big 12. If they can go into Bama and beat them, and I'm not saying it would shock me. I don't think it would. I think that they're going to be good. I just don't think I feel comfortable enough picking them to go 12-0, 11-1. I think they go 10-2. I think they lose to Bama, pound Oklahoma, and lose to some random Big 12 team.
If they beat Alabama, I'm looking at their schedule. They are losing at Baylor.
They'll do something stupid somewhere. And that's the biggest thing with this Texas team heading into this year is which game are you going to do your best to not screw up? Because I trust them to get up and play at Bama. They're going to play that game close unless the environment is just too much for them, which I don't think it's going to be. Like, they always get up for big games. They've always done that in the last decade when they've struggled to be as good as Texas should be.
You remember
they've lost stupid games like at Texas Tech and against Oklahoma State last year.
They were back. They beat Notre Dame in 2016.
Okay, Joe.
2 weeks later, they lose to Cal. They beat Oklahoma in the regular season. Then they drop a game to Iowa State. I mean, This is frustrating, and it's not normal. And I can't just blame Steve Sarkisian because Charlie Strong did this. Tom Herman did this. This is a cultural problem.
It is. But the difference in why I'm higher on this Texas program currently now than I was previously is because of the way that he's recruited and developed on the offensive line. Since 2010, do you know how many draft picks Alabama's had on the offensive line? Or excuse me, Texas has had on the offensive line?
Texas? I don't know.
1 or 2. They've had 2, and one of them was developed by Sark. So, they just haven't developed offensive line talent very well. Kelvin Banks might be an All-American this year at tackle as a true sophomore. He was a former 5-star. So that kind of just shows the development curve that has improved at Texas at important positions. Jalen Ford is the best defensive player in the Big 12. I'm high on Texas. I think that the way that they've struggled in the past is because they haven't recruited well on the line of scrimmage and they haven't developed well on the line of scrimmage. And the way things have changed there, it seems like that's changed. And that's why I'm high on Texas heading into 2023 is I think that their skill position talent is still really, really good. I know they lost Bijan. I know they lost Roshan. But I think they're going to figure out their running situation. They've got Cedric Baxter, who's the top-ranked running back in the 2023 class, who's probably going to get carries. I think Quinn is going to be pretty good. I think people have swung too far in him not being good for whatever reason. I think it's because of the brand and the name and everything else. I think he's going to be really good. I wouldn't be shocked if he turns into an NFL draft pick after the season. And if Quinn's not good, throw Malik Murphy in there. He's another former top 100 blue chip quarterback, I believe. And if Malik Murphy's not good, the most significant recruiting win in the history of the sport is the third string quarterback.
Who?
So
His name?
Arch Manning.
Oh, yes, Arch.
So like I think that Texas, I buy Texas. I just don't want to go all in on Texas and be like, that's a team that's going to the playoff.
And here's another issue with the Texas program that kind of got underreported in the previous years. After Colt McCoy, who was their best quarterback until like 2018?
Sam Ellinger.
Like, dude, they were missing out on Andrew Luck. They were missing out on Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston wanted to be a Texas Longhorn, and they said no.
Johnny Manziel wanted to be a Texas Longhorn.
Exactly. So look what they're doing with the quarterback play. You got Arch Manning. That is football mecca. Like that is royalty. You got Quinn. That's one of the best recruits of all time. People like to freak out about Quinn, but he's a victim of his own success. He played great against Alabama. He gets hurt. And people forget that was his freshman year. This was the first time
it was his freshman year, yeah.
He was getting action. So they're going to be good. My question for you is, what does Texas have to go? Like, what is their record for people to cool off on Sark?
I think that it swung too far for them, and people saying like if they don't win the Big 12, it's a failure, it's a disappointment. I disagree with that. I think if they go 10-2 and play for a Big 12 title game, it should be viewed as a success.
I agree.
And I think that is notable momentum heading into the SEC. And if they go 10-2, that probably means that Quinn had a really good year. He's probably looking at an NFL draft pick. Their offensive and defensive line talent is going to return again because most of it's sophomores and juniors. And I don't think you want to go into the SEC having to be under a first-year head coach again. So I think 10-2, and they've got a good opportunity to win a Big 12 title. Am I picking them to do it? I don't know. We are going to do our conference picks at another episode, so stay tuned for that. But I think that Texas should play for a Big 12 title. I don't know if I should say that they should win it, though.
They should win. Realistically, but
They should win. But
now, if they go 10-3, let's say they lose a close game to Oklahoma, Texas Tech, TCU, whatever, you feel confident. What you don't want to see is the road loss to Iowa State. You don't want to see the regular season loss to Texas Tech. Win the games you're supposed to, and Steve's going to get some momentum into SEC play. Having Arch Manning in your back pocket, if Quinn leaves, it's like, okay, we have Peyton Manning and Eli Manning's nephew.
Or Malik Murphy.
Or Malik Murphy. I mean, they are stacked in the quarterback position. Dude, they had Hudson Card last year as a backup. That's a great backup.
Yes, it is.
They're good.
And the one thing that people cannot say about Sark is that he struggled to develop quarterbacks. He's always had good quarterback play. And now you're seeing that in the way they've recruited, and I kind of trust him to develop good quarterbacks.
You always talk about it. Nick Saban thought he could have taken over Alabama.
He was the man in waiting, according to a book I read.
It's crazy. Hey, we all know the top game.
It's got to be, right?
It's called The Game for a reason. It's Ohio State, Michigan. And I am so sick of these people calling for Ryan Day's head. I am sick of these people that think that J.J. McCarthy is going to be a top 15 pick. If Ohio State's secondary just has a normal game, if they don't fall on their face, they win. J.J. McCarthy went 12 of 24 against Ohio State for like 300 yards. He didn't make one single throw that was a 50-50 ball. I mean, Michigan, they're good. But when they play Georgia, they lose by 23. When Ohio State plays Georgia, they lose by a single point and probably should have won the game. I think Ohio State goes up to the big house. I think Marvin Harrison's too much. I think the spread offense is too much. I think Jim Knowles' defense is going to improve, and they're going to outscore the Wolverines.
Yeah, this is my number one game as well. I think it's hard for it to not be, considering all the sideline stories of it. Obviously, you talked about the Ryan Day side of it and the Ohio State side of it. I'm going to talk about the Michigan side of it. It is their game right now. They won the last two. They've won the Big Ten in back-to-back years. They probably feel like it's their conference. I mean, they were picked to win the Big Ten this year. They were not picked to win the Big Ten last year. They're higher ranked than Ohio State entering the preseason. So I think Michigan probably feels like it's a game that they are expected to win this season, especially with it being at the big house. And I would agree with that. I think Michigan is probably expected to win, at least entering the regular season. I'm going to go this a little bit further. This obviously is a big game because of it being the game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last time Jim Harbaugh coaches in this game.
In the NFL.
I think he might. I think that this NCAA stuff hanging over his head is fairly significant. We know he's flirted with the NFL each of the last 2 years. This negotiated settlement between the Committee of Infractions and Michigan for the impermissible contact during the COVID recruiting period is now not just going to be a 4-game suspension at the start of the season, which likely means that I think the NCAA wants it to be longer than 4 games. And I think that Jim Harbaugh is probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh has a really good year. They win the Big Ten again. They go to the playoff. Maybe they play for the national championship.
Lose to Texas.
And he says, you know what? Like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't feel like dealing with this BS from the NCAA. And I'm going to take an NFL job, be more prepared for it going into it, have a better expectation of, how to perform well in an interview. We've heard that he didn't do great in the interview with the Vikings. I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last game against Ohio State.
Dude, he just walked in and I guess it was like the most awkward conversation. He's like, all right, where's the contract? Where do I sign? And the Vikings are like, who the heck is this guy? He doesn't work for the NFL because he wants the power. He wants the personnel decisions.
All of that's true, but he wins. And that's what matters in the NFL more than anything.
Like the 49ers was great. I mean, he turned around Alex Smith. He turned around Colin Kaepernick. But he would need a pretty good situation. You would see the Cowboys job. You would see the Vikings job would have been perfect with him with Kirk Cousins. I think he's got a really bad reputation with NFL guys.
I mean, the Niners were basically like, hey, man, like, get out of here.
And he's the winningest coach, winning percentage-wise, because he's trying to tell the GM what to do. I mean, these are guys with high egos that want to do their job. Like, he's not going to mesh well with management. Why didn't he go this year? You know what I mean? Like, we hear this.
I think the Broncos showed significant interest in him, but then they had Sean Payton kind of fall into their lap, and, like, you're just going to hire Sean Payton. He won a Super Bowl, and he did it for longer in an organization that historically has not been very good.
Yeah. I don't know. With Jim Harbaugh, I got to believe it. I got to see it to believe it. I think he's going to be at Michigan for a while. I mean, he has the chance to become the next Bo Schembechler. Like, he can be here for 20 years, win 10, 9, 11 games a year, and he's going to go down as a legend.
He probably already is, considering he swung the power of the rivalry back.
What if they play during COVID in 2020?
I don't think he has a job anymore because I think they get absolutely destroyed, and I think people fire him after that.
I don't think he survives either. I think that's a really good
because I think they get absolutely smashed in that 2020 game if they play. And reminder, if I remember correctly, Michigan had enough players for that game, and they just chose not to play.
They were done.
Does that sound right? Is that how that situation was?
Oh, they were fine. I mean, they canceled games against Maryland. They canceled games against Iowa, Ohio State. I mean, that Michigan team had to come back down and beat Rutgers in overtime. Like, this was a struggling program. I mean, no one was expecting these past 2 years for Michigan to win 25 games.
No.
Harbaugh has turned around a minor miracle.
No, he definitely has. And I mean, again, like, I think that they should be expected to win against Ohio State this year. I think that they should be expected to win the Big Ten this year. All that being said, if I had to pick one of those two teams to win the national championship, I would pick Ohio State because I think they have more talent. And I think they have the necessary talent to do it. And I've seen them come closer to doing it, and they don't screw around with Philly specials on the 1 yard line against TCU in the semifinal when you have the 2-time reigning Joe Moore Award winning offensive line and a running back who was a top 50 overall recruit and Donovan Edwards, who could probably just run backwards over the line of scrimmage at that point. But yeah, I think Michigan is deserving of being ranked ahead of Ohio State this year. I think they're deserving of being the Big Ten favorite entering the season. But if they're going to win a national championship and take the next step, they need to let JJ cook. Like, JJ was a former 5-star. He's incredibly talented. I mean, I'm not as high on JJ as like other people are. I don't see him as a consensus like first round pick like others do because I just haven't seen him do it enough on the field. You talked about the way he played against Ohio State. Like, I watched the Ohio State game as well as millions of other people, and I was like, the most impressive play he had was the option keeper at the goal line to get in for the touchdown run. Like, I don't give you credit for hitting wide open receivers because of coverage bust. I just don't. Right. They need to let him cook. They need to let him play. They need to let him play to his talents. And if that means not giving the ball to Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards as much this season, then so be it. Because I think by the end of the season, once you head into the Ohio State game, you're probably going to need to let them cook. And if you make it to the playoff again, you're playing Georgia, you're probably going to need to let them cook. Because I don't think Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are going to run over Georgia's defensive line.
Harbaugh loves field goals. I mean, they kicked 5 against Michigan State. They kicked 4 against Illinois. He's always just been super vanilla on the offense. And fine, that's good against Maryland. Like, that's good against maybe even Wisconsin. But when you play these elite teams like Georgia, they are better at what you do. And Ohio State figured out that formula. Like, if you want to compete against Alabama and Georgia, you got to throw the ball around and score 40 points. But I got a hypothetical for you, just for fun. It's probably not going to happen. Let's say Michigan beats Ohio State in the regular season finale, but Ohio State still makes the playoff.
Like last year.
And then they knock off, let's just say, LSU in the semifinal. And they play Michigan for the national title. And
let's just I don't even want to contemplate that in my brain.
It almost happened last year. And
yeah, it did.
Let's say Michigan beats Ohio State twice in 1 year.
Then I think Ryan Day might lose his job.
Ryan Day, who just lost the national title game
and lost 4 in a row to Michigan, he might lose his job at that point. Or he might just be like, hey, I'm done. I'm going to the NFL to be an offensive coordinator or something.
His seat would be boiling. And
yeah, he might lose his job if they lost four straight to Ohio State or 4 straight to Michigan, including a national title game.
All right, just want to make sure.